Hello and welcome back, class, to this course in art history. Last time we were here, we went over medieval art, and today we will be discussing Renaissance art. That being said, we will be limiting this to a brief introduction, a dipping your toes in, so to speak, look at some paintings, sculpture, and architecture from different time periods and places in Renaissance art, as we wouldn't have time to go over the vast range of examples that are possible. So the Renaissance, it means rebirth in French, which is a sort of return to classical antiquity, looking at texts and artwork from that time period. We owe the religion of Islam some gratitude for saving a lot of the works from that time period, as in Western Christianity, a lot of that was forgotten or not looked at, that being the classical Greek and Roman examples. So other things that influenced the Renaissance were the Black Death, the Medici family and their money influence, and humanism, which is sort of getting away from an omnipresent God sort of centric thinking to a more, human beings have some power too, most specifically men at that time period, but humans have control over more things than just God. So we're seeing sort of a transformation from that. So here we see kind of a quick example of some differences between medieval and Renaissance painting. We see the same scene, Madonna and Child. On the left, however, it is more two-dimensional, flat composition, whereas on the right we see some linear perspective, some light and shadow, so kind of a more realistic portrayal of the subject matter. So early Renaissance, there are three time periods most typically thought of, but that's also disputed, but typically early, the high and the late Renaissance. Here we have it starting in Florence, and artists, in addition to kind of using different techniques, they use things like linear perspective, so to give the picture a three-dimensional quality, less flat looking perspective than of the previous time period. Here we'll look at an artist next, Giotto, and we see that kind of transformation here in this also portrayal of mother and child, or Madonna and Child. If you look at her knee, we can see some folds in the drapery, and that kind of wasn't done before in previous centuries. You have to go back to, like I said, the classical Greek and Roman portrayals in artwork. And this is unique because it's on a painting. Lorenzo Ghiberti is using the same qualities here. It's not a great picture, but also of linear perspective and finer details. Here in sculptures, these are bronze doors on the Florence Baptistry, called the Gates of Paradise. They portray scenes from the Old and New Testament. And so religion still plays a part in influencing artists, but they're slowly moving away from that into more secular ideas, and we'll see that. Next to the High Renaissance, probably most people are familiar with the artists from this time period. And time periods overlap, so some of the High Renaissance artists lived at the same time as some of the early ones, but it can be very confusing. But for all intents and purposes, most people know Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael, the Ninja Turtles. Oh, that was a joke. But Leonardo da Vinci was a man of many talents, and on the previous slide you saw Renaissance man. That's where the term came from. He was a painter, sculptor, inventor, scientist, just did everything. Here we see his painting, the Mona Lisa, one of the most famous paintings in existence. Sadly, we only have 15 of his paintings that are known to exist. His Salvator Mundi sold a few years ago for $450 million, which is a record for a piece of artwork. Here's another example of one of his paintings, The Last Supper. We see kind of a linear perspective in the walls to a central point, and then we see emotions on the face of the figures. We see emotion through their gestures. So this is kind of a big change for this time period. So important to think about. Here, equally famous artists from that time period, Michelangelo. Here on the left, we see that prime example of Renaissance sculpture, and probably the most famous pieces of sculpture in existence is his portrayal of David. Equally on the right is his help in the design of the dome from the St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. So another man of many talents. Finally, we get to the late Renaissance. It's also known as Mannerism. This emerged also in Italy, but it found its way to Spain, up to the Netherlands. So, and it wasn't always called Mannerism in each area, so it gets very complicated trying to dissect the different areas and time periods. So, artists at this time thought every high point has been achieved in the high Renaissance, so now they kind of changed things up a bit, and here we see elongated figures, brighter colors, still using light and shadow and things of that nature, but they exaggerate it, make it a little more stylistic in that regard. Here we see Jan van Eyck, who is a Flemish painter from up in the Netherlands. He painted both religious and secular scenes. So the patronage kind of changed too, from Medici family or a pope to more wealthy merchants. So they wanted portraits of themselves. So a more secular portrayal here with some religious tones as well. He was also one of the first artists to use oil as a binding in paintings. Before this, they used tempera, an egg, as a binding. And next, we'll take a look at his famous work, the Ghent Altarpiece, which has a very long history. It was stolen during World War II and hidden in a salt mine, which the movie Monuments Men is about, rediscovering works like this. One of the most beloved treasures in the world today. And finally, El Greco, and here we see the elongated figures again. He was a Greek painter from Italy that moved to Spain, so very complicated life, but he was part of the Spanish Renaissance. He used bright colors as well, and it's almost like a dreamlike quality, and you can see that it influenced later artists such as Jackson Pollock and Pablo Picasso. So I'd like to thank you for listening to this presentation, and we're going to do a quick activity. We're going to divide you up into groups of 4 to 5, and each will receive an envelope which will have a picture cut into pieces of artwork we've gone over, and it'll be your job to go to other groups, find the missing pieces, and put your puzzle together. And then once your group has a puzzle fully intact, we will go around and see if each group can name the painting and the artist. Once again, I thank you for listening and have a great day.